And good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, family, Empowerment Tribe, first-time viewers across all platforms. It's great to be back with you. I'm Jeanette Smith, certified life strategist and mindset coach, here with a topic that I know you all have asked for. I've been excited to be able to bring to you. And so here we are on our Friday. We keep saying we've wrapped up the 21-day journey, the 21-day release devotional journey, and we did for 21 days. We came at it with topics, everything from your purpose to trying to understand, about our mindset, feelings buried alive, never die. I mean, such great topics. And I'm happy to say to you that by the end of this weekend, I will have put all of those great broadcasts together on their own page so you can use them as a resource. Good morning, Michael. I see you. As a resource for not only yourself to go back through and use, but for others whom you know might need that little extra help. Now we're here and we're going to be talking about next steps. But before we get to that, I want to thank those of you who filled out the survey because, part of one thing ending is that you got to look at how do we begin? What's the next step in that process? What are we doing there? And so I was happy to be able to hear from you all, to take in not only what's happening in your lives, because many people are going back to work. I found it interesting that half of you are going back to work, half of you are still, kind of in this shelter at home thing. So it was kind of half and half on that. But to hear about the topics that were important to you, how your schedule and flow for even taking in online content, what kind of content you wanted to get from me specifically as your internet coach. So all of those things really helped me in my meditative time sit, think, and feel and try to ascertain what direction was God really leading me as we move forward as a community. And this is the revealing of all of that labor. So Mondays, we're going to start by having a Mindset Monday. It's just going to be a 15-minute popper. We're going to pop in. I'm going to give you something to focus on for the week. And then I'm going to let you scurry away and tuck that away and work on it through the week. So it's a nugget wrapped in an exercise that you'll work out through the week. That's Mindset Monday. Tuesdays at 10 a.m. And again, all of these will be at 10 a.m. because I know some of you said mornings, some of you said evenings. We're going to start with this, and then if we need to adjust, we'll look at that later. Tuesdays will be Living in Purpose. Living in Purpose, and I'm grabbing two books. We came out of my 21-day release devotional for the last 21 days, but we'll be going back to revisit a book that many of you have used as a tool from dream to reality, navigating the path of your life purpose. And we're just going to do nuggets. We're not going to do it as exhaustively as we did the devotional, but just nuggets to help you get going and make sure that in this season, are you in the role that you need to be in this season? And if that is affirmed, how do you move forward in this season? Wednesdays will be our Release Devo Day, and that will be unisex. So we won't have to say the women's release experience because the brothers were coming anyway. So it's just going to be for everybody. It's whatever. Anybody, everybody come. And we'll get together over some of those topics that you all said we need to go back and revisit, like hard conversations. I see you on Periscope pumping out those hearts. Thank you. Love you. Love you. I see y'all in the chat room. I see you. And so we'll get together on Wednesdays to do that. Thursdays will be Life Unscripted. You were with us yesterday. I brought you actually two of my guests today. And we were talking about how to cope in trauma. And so we're going to continue that hour-long format for things, interviews, keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening in society, but lifestyle stuff, entertainment, and everything that leads towards you having an empowered life. So that'll be Thursdays. And then on Fridays, we'll wrap back up with the question I asked you on Monday. Hey, Helen. Hey, Pamela. Hey, Tan. Hey, Monique. On Friday, we'll wrap up with live and replay coaching. That was a request that you all indicated on the survey that you'd like to see some live time, real time coaching. And so we'll do that, and we'll share that on Friday. So You can take a screenshot of that. I'll also have it posted on my page. And I hope if you're not following my business page, please follow my business page, because I'm going to reclaim my personal page for myself. And we're all going to gather on the Jeanette R. Smith broadcast page. All right. That's what it's looking like. I see you all in the chat room. I'm going to pull up your comments. I see you. Wendy says, good morning to my new sister. Well, hello, Wendy. This is amazing. Thank you for being obedient to the leading of the Holy Spirit. I'm so excited to review all 21 days. Lori Hines, yes, one of our co-facilitators. Whoop, whoop. So excited, Wendy. So excited to have you as part of the Empowerment Tribe. Morgan Watson, follow business page. Thank you. See, you're already air traffic controlling. I love you already. Hello, Leola. How are you? Monique, I see you. Hi, Tan. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Helen, Pamela. Good to see you all in the room. Now, as always, this is the moment of truth. Share it out now, because y'all wait and you get all enthralled with the content. You're like, I should have shared. They need to hear this. Just go ahead and do it now. Plus, we want to bring all the hearts and minds we can into this community of healing, right? This is the message. These are the messages. These are the things. I see you on Periscope. I see you sharing. These are the things that we need to be discussing. And let me tell you, I'm not going to fuss. It's okay. So it's going to be a low-key fuss. It's going to be just a little low-key fuss wrapped in love, because you said I'm your coach. As we're talking about next steps, y'all, let me tell you what next steps doesn't look like, okay? Can your sister tell you what next steps does not look like? Next steps does not look like you getting off an hour and a half long broadcast where you're saying, oh my God, thank you for talking about this. This blessed my soul. Oh, thank you so much. We need these conversations about how to cope, how to interact, how to build community, and then I'm scrolling through Facebook because I'm on Community Watch. Now listen, I'm not on watch tonight. I was up to 3 a.m. on Community Watch with y'all. I'm not doing it tonight. Sister got to sleep. Somebody else is tagging in on Community Watch tonight. But I'm scrolling through Facebook, and some of us, not all of us, some of us are posting the horrific images, are reliving and talking about how this makes me mad and I'm anxious, and now I just want to go up to Minneapolis and tear up some stuff. Y'all, my babies, my peoples, healing moves forward. Coping moves forward. And we told you, don't go watch the stuff that you know that triggers you, because you're back in the cycle. Remember that warning? We said, don't do it. Right? Okay. That's all. See? Wasn't that bad. I didn't even bend you over and spank you. Nothing. Didn't do it. But now I'm going to bring in some powerhouses. Don't do it. Tell them, Wendy, do not do it. But now we're going to bring in some powerhouses to help us with how do we move forward. Keep moving forward, y'all. And then when you feel yourself your energy starting to vibrate high, and you're starting to get that hulking out, just push pause and step back. Here's who's going to help us today. You remember him as my pastor, but he's also my brother. Would you please welcome the Reverend Dr. Patrick Claiborne back? Yay! That's my clap track. Yay.
Good morning. How are you?
We're good. We're glad to have you back. So glad. And then I'm so excited because sometimes things just work out in a way where the right people just get in where they fit in. And I'm glad to have this brother get back in. This is my friend and my brother, Kenny Anderson. He is a multicultural affairs officer for the city of Huntsville, but he is also a national certified mental health counselor. Good to have you back, Kenny.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. And again, great to share the platform with my brother.
Yes. So thank you all. Thank you for throwing out your radical hospitality and your emojis to welcome them in the room. I wanted to start as our jumping off point. You kind of heard me already. We kind of had a few slips, few little slips. And so there was something that I saw in Psychology Today page on Instagram, and I know Reverend Doctor, you posted it again too, and I just want to share it. Kenny, you probably maybe have seen it also on social media as a jumping off point for our discussion today. And it talks about what we think healing looks like, right? We think healing looks like that little tiny circle at the top where we just meditate peacefully and everything melts away and then we're healed. And then what healing actually looks like is unpacking some trauma. And you see the biggest part of the piece of that pie. And then having difficult conversations. Do you remember us talking about that? Taking radical responsibility for your own actions, implementing healthy routines, and then setting healthy boundaries. I know, Reverend Doctor, you posted this as well. What was it that struck you that you felt like, yeah, this is a message that needs to be retweeted, reposted?
Oh, every slice of that pie. I mean, please keep it up. Every slice, the unpacking trauma, the difficult conversations, the setting and enforcing of boundaries, the implementing of healthy routines, and this one, taking radical responsibilities for your actions. I think each slice of that pie is so critical to healing and help and hope that we can't undermine any one of those slices. Each one of those slices is critical and necessary. That radical responsibility for our actions, that unpacking the trauma. I think what you saw last night when you were going through your timeline and you were seeing a lot of that, I think what you are finding is that people are realizing that they have more trauma than they knew. And a lot is coming out. I watched an interview with Van Jones. Now, you know Van Jones, African-American man who's out in the political sphere. Yes. And he really does try to mediate harmony and balance, and he really tries to bridge the gap between party lines, between racial lines, between ethnic and economic lines. And he's one of those ones, he's a freedom fighter for all causes and tries to say, hey, let's not lose our head. Let's come to the table and let's really get legislation in place and do that. And he said, at this time, this is so different because, yes, you had Rodney King 25 plus years ago. You had Trayvon Martin. You go down the line. He said, each time I was able to say, hey, let's not lose our heads. Let's really come back to the table. Let's hammer it out. Let's get it done. He says, now they are not trying to hear me.
Yeah.
They're not trying to hear that anymore because now we've hit what is called the tipping point. And I think what you're finding is people have said that they're starting to get a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of rage. And so you'll find that people will cycle back in their trauma because they realize there's so much underneath the surface that they have. What was your show the other day? Feelings buried alive never die.
Yeah.
And people are realizing that a whole lot of stuff got buried because we as African Americans oftentimes have been forced to forgive and forgive in an unhealthy way so that we can move forward. And we haven't been able to scream out our pain, to scream out our hurt. And so even when we scream it out in a healthy way, what happens is we don't realize how much trauma is still left underneath. And so we'll cycle back through some other stuff, not realizing, oh, wait a minute, I still got a lot more trauma that I never let out. I still got a lot more stuff in there that happened that I never put forward. And sometimes we don't even know it. I didn't know that I was traumatized by a lot of this stuff, even in my teens. I remember as a teenager, I was driving by myself for one of the first times. It was at night. I was on my way home and a police car ran up on me, sirens blaring. I pulled over thinking the police officer was coming for me. I broke out in a cold sweat. My heart elevated 10 times. Police officer passed me by. And in that moment, I thought, oh my God, why did I respond? Why did I assume he was coming after me? And I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. And the police officer wasn't, but the trigger of the siren.
Yeah.
Having seen African Americans pulled over before. So again, I think what you're seeing, Jeanette, is a lot of unreleased trauma that is coming out. And I think that pie is going to be helpful to us.
Absolutely. And, you know, I talked a little bit yesterday about, part of the pie, let me see if I can do it this way, because I want to share it as we're talking. Part of the pie talks about unpacking the trauma. And then another part of the pie talks about this little space in here where we've got to set some boundaries. And sometimes the boundary is around, like I shared with you all, knowing what you can and can't handle, you know, because I'm not going to, while you're processing, while people are, we're all processing, right? Like it happens differently for each of us. But as we're all processing, I can't hold you responsible when you're hurting if you're crying. I can't hold, if you just got hit in the head with a bat, or you cut your arm, nobody can fault you for crying because you're bleeding or moaning out of pain. These are the moans of our community out of pain, right? Nobody can do. But then now we're in this collective. Right? And what we do, and Kenny mentioned this yesterday, when we have a physical injury, we put something over it. Immediately with that cut, you put something over it. Even if you got a paper cut, you grab it. We put something over it, and then we go to attend to it. That's how we do our bodies. But that's not what we do with our mindsets. Right. And so I guess the part that I hope that we keep speaking, and I've been encouraging people, please watch this show from yesterday. Please share this show from yesterday. Not because God will do whatever God does, but I know that I'm an instrument to help have these conversations that maybe you don't feel comfortable having, or maybe you don't know how to have, or maybe you just need to hear them again. So we can put that Band-Aid on to help us start. Let's stop the bleeding for a second in my own mind. At least let me not don't not process. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want y'all to hear me say, I see you, Pastor, I'm coming to you. Don't not process, right? I see you, Dennis. We've been forced to forgive in an unhealthy way. Yeah, absolutely. Don't not do that. But what I am saying is, when you open your wound to people who can't really care for it, you run the risk of the wound becoming deeper. You run the risk of now taking that hurt to a deeper level. Because, some people can't just see it as a vent. I was on some pages and one of my brothers was live and he was just bending, and he usually never cusses it. He was cussing. He's like, I'm sorry. I just said, man, this is where you are. It's just where you are, and ain't nobody, this is your page, your space. This is just where you are. That is exhaling, right? When we take the images and the things that cause us pain and we pour them back into our pain, and then you allow and you're entertaining conversations for people who can't help you manage your pain. They're not trying to help you subdue your pain. They're just adding to your pain. That's the thing that concerns me. So that's why I'm so glad that we're doing this today. Pastor, you had a point.
I actually want you to share a story of yours that you shared with me offline. You were, I'll set it up. You were looking at through social media, and a coach that I guess that you follow. Something. Now it seems that this brother was unpacking his trauma, but he was not implementing a healthy routine. I think. Do you recall what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. In fact, I reached out to a couple of mental health specialists, counselors, and people that I knew and said, hey, do you know this brother? Because I'm like trying to, like, maybe somebody we can try to scoop him up, But the conversation, it was about who's suffering more. Is it harder to be a black man or is it harder to be a black woman? Like, why are we even doing that? Because that's a lose-lose. Like, it's just a lose-lose. I mean, for every story that you have, I have a story that happened in Huntsville, Alabama, where I was driving and I was going home, and I was actually a news anchor, well known in that Tri-City area, and got pulled over and asked to get out of my car for no good reason. And then he calls his buddy over, and I'm clear that this was just to take a look-see at the goods. So I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm out in front of my university, but in an area where there's not a lot of light, I don't feel comfortable. And how about this one, Capper? They were Black. So I'm just saying to you that anxiety of lights and that anxiety of being followed, and the anxiety of not feeling protected by people in authority, like that thing is real for all of us. And so there's no reason for us to go like, it's harder for women and here's the stats on this and that. And, my thing is with trafficking and women that come up missing and abuse in the home, we can't count the real numbers. I mean, you can give me some stats that you have, but I mean, we can't really count the real numbers. And so what I lovingly said was, brother, you are hurting. And you've already said on this other thread, I feel so much anxiety. You're hurting, you feel anxiety. This is not going to help you. It's not going to help your community. And you're a light bearer. Right. People come to you for light. So do yourself the solid. Unpack the trauma. Mm-hmm. Set some boundaries around with being on social media. Implement some healthy routines. Take responsibility for your actions. Because it was just, I hated to see what was happening on his page as a result of all of that. Now, I will say that there was a live stream. I told you all that Iyanla Vanzant got on like on the hour, every hour. God bless her for people like her and other people that are just trying to de-escalate by letting people have the space to yell and say whatever they want to say. And she's protecting it. And you say what you want to say. It's your feelings. We're not going to look at somebody else, what they should do. And I tagged him to that. I don't know that he went, but I haven't seen anything posted recently. So I'm hoping that maybe he's taken some time for himself. That's my hope. And it's my hope for us that, yes, we're wounded and we're angry. It's my hope that we love ourselves enough to take some time. You're not letting the people down. If you come out of the news for a cycle, you're not letting the community down if you don't post on the hour, every hour about it. Wrong conversation for this time. We are all suffering. Absolutely, Reverend Riri. And so that's the hope with this. Kenny, I want you to jump in on this wheel of what healing actually looks like, because as a mental health counselor and professional, I know you've done this cycle with people many times.
Yeah, I have not seen this, but I'm happy to be seeing it. And I wish that the same way that we attempt to make certain other things viral, that we would try to make this viral. I'm not saying you all, but I'm just saying society. Right. I would hope that they would see something like this and say, oh, there's the answer. There's the help. This is really a great visual depiction of what that experience is like. And I think it represents what most of us do when we think about facing a challenge. We want to take the most direct route to resolution. We want to be able to get to the solution as quickly as possible, with as little pain as possible, without as much transparency as might be needed. A lot of people in the process of attempting to be healed want to continue to cover their hurts. And unless we are willing to bravely and courageously face those things and present those things to a professional counselor, perhaps, to provide guidance and direction, those things will continue to hurt us over time. And in the same way that we talk about the concept of forgiveness, and I think that this is a very important conversation, national conversation that we're having right now, in terms of what is the role of forgiveness in this process. I would just simply say this, that people need to remind themselves that forgiveness is about you. It's not about people that have offended you. Forgiveness is the thing that cuts the bond between you and the thing that hurts you. Forgiveness is the thing that helps you move forward to be able to confront the trauma that you've experienced. It doesn't release people of the responsibility for hurting you. You know, this officer, whatever the outcome of that situation, if he's convicted or if he is found innocent. I mean, we have to be prepared for any scenario as far as that situation is concerned. Right. And then what is the response to that situation as well? Well, there would be a lot of hurt and a lot of emotion regardless of the outcome. And each of us have to ask ourselves, how are we going to confront the challenges that face us? How are we going to be honestly able to take accountability and responsibility for our trauma, as Reverend Dr. Claiborne shared, that we all have been traumatized in different ways. And If you look at it on a continuum from mild to severe, some people have not faced as much as others, but certainly as a collective, Africans in America have been traumatized for over 400 years now. And we continue to experience these kinds of things in so many different kinds of ways. And we've got to be honest about that. And we also have to be conscientious about it in a continual basis. I love the quote by James Baldwin, the amazing author, who also happens to be my uncle by marriage.
Wow. All right.
But James Baldwin talked about how being Black in America and conscious leaves a person in a constant state of rage and anxiety and discomfort. And that is something that we all have to act on and respond to and acknowledge. You know, this whole notion of I don't see color, or let's just all be one and let's all get along. That shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be able to accept people as they are, where they are, and to not minimize or marginalize any aspect of our humanity because of our race. And so that is an ongoing challenge. That's an ongoing struggle. And this is a phenomenal diagram right here that I hope people will embrace and take into account.
I do too. I do too. You know, before we get to talking next steps, I wonder, I just wonder, we have as a community within the church and, you know, as women, we will do what we call sister circles, where we get together and we're just going to talk, and we're going to create a space for women to just pour out what's happening. Nobody gets to judge it. Nobody gets to talk about what you should do, girl, or what you shouldn't be doing, or any of that. And it is the landfill for the wounds of our soul, right? And I'm wondering, in this time, is that something that needs to be created for us all, but especially for Black men who are used to holding their feelings close to the vest, unless it is anger, unless it is, you know, frustration. Because sometimes it's easier to say, I'm mad and I'm angry, than to say, I'm hurt and I'm scared. Right. And I admit, and I recognize that you can be both and, right. But it's sometimes easier to say the aggressive the aggressive emotion than it is to say the vulnerable emotion that actually resides in there. And what I know we're seeing men feeling vulnerable. They're feeling vulnerable. Listen, the women, we feel vulnerable with you, for you, right? And so I just wonder, and I just throw that out to ask, is that something that you think that men would even take part in? Is that something that you see as a viable option? Because then that's something that I'm going to start asking people that I know in spaces and places, have you considered this? Because listen, now, you know, some of us are still under, shelter at home. You can get on the Zoom. You don't even have to leave your house and do it. You know, it's easier than ever before to put something together. What do you all think? And I'm asking you as my brothers and professionals, but as my brothers.
Well, yes, I do think that that's something that would be valued, and I think that's something that men will look toward. You know, part of the unpacking the trauma is that, you know, culturally, men have been taught to disregard feelings that would make them appear vulnerable.
Sure.
And so, you know, it's as simple as, hey boy, buck up, don't cry, you know, man up, you know, and some that can often be damaging. And the other piece is that what men are looking for, and women too, but the men are looking for kind of both and. They're looking for a place to heal emotionally, but they also want to see some action. Yeah, I want to heal emotionally, but I want this wrong to be made right.
Mm-hmm.
I want, and if men don't see any results coming out of the emotional healing, we are result oriented.
Mm-hmm.
We are problem solving oriented. If I am working on something, I can't see any results. And if I can't get any tangible outcome, then I think whatever I'm doing is not working. And so trying to help men to see that, you know, emotional healing will begin in very intangible ways, but there will be tangible results after a while. And that when we talk about the healing of our nation, how do we link emotional healing and say that this is how this turns into action to bring justice to the situation? I think if we can show them that, then they'll be more willing to adhere. And I think too, it seems as though men are more willing to be vulnerable in confidence.
Yeah.
In very confined and very intentional spaces. They're more willing to let their guard down. They're not willing to do it on a national platform where everybody can see, but perhaps in a small group, a small gathering, where there is this very clear understanding that what happens here stays here. Then you'll find you'll have more takers for that.
Well, I'm absolutely not talking about a national platform. I'm talking about small spaces and pockets in our communities, within our churches, within organizations, because I know that, like, for women, that's the thing we do. We gather, the women gather, you know what I mean? Because we know, I ain't carrying this around for 152 years. Like, I'm not going to have high blood pressure. I'm not going to be stroking out. I'm not going to be doing that. We want our brothers to be able to find that. So I set that out, not even as a charge, but just something for y'all to meditate on, you who are watching. If you have leadership over men, if you have influence over men, this might be something that you need to think about, talk out with your guys, talk out with your people, meditate on, marinate on, and pray about, because it seems to me, if we can not make Facebook, Instagram, Twitter the landfill, but we can take it to places where we know people are going to help us attend to the wound, then we can stop cutting open the wound on a constantly. That's my concern, because how do we get to the fix? This was the part we talked about yesterday, right? We talked about the coping to get to the healing, so we can even hear, to get to the ask, so that we can get to, now what do I do, right? And so as we talk about next steps, I see you, Neil. As we get to next steps, let's talk about specifically the things that we can do individually, because part of that healing chart is setting and enforcing boundaries. And let's start with, that's about your personal boundaries, what you will or won't do, what you will or will not allow to happen. And then being able to take responsibility, radical. I love that it uses radical responsibility for your own actions, and implementing healthy routines. And as we said, and even with having difficult conversations, you need help sometimes. We need help. We're not always versed and have the tools for that. And so we're talking about, how do you move forward in different directions? And I wanted to take it from mind, body, and spirit. I want to start with spirit. And again, for those of you who come from different faith backgrounds and beliefs and understandings, meet us at the place where you understand God to be. Let's talk about the role of that when you're dealing with trauma, because listen, we're talking about what's happening as race relations in our country, but we're still in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. Like, we're still trying to deal with that. We're still trying to deal with this new norm. People are still trying to deal with, my job's on hold. I don't know if I'm going back, or maybe I'm going back. And when I go back, we were just talking about it before. How do we go back and do church? I mean, everybody's kind of trying to deal with this. So there are so many compounding factors to the trauma that, is kind of permeating now. So from a spiritual perspective, how do we dive in to taking care of ourselves? What does that look like?
Well, I think first, part of the unpacking the trauma is allowing people to have difficult conversations. Now you say, well, what does that mean spiritually? That means having difficult conversations with God. The Bible, for those who adhere to it, says, cast your cares upon God because God cares for us. So that means that when we pray, we can ask God the tough questions. God, why did George Floyd die? God, why did you not step in and save him? God, why have you not brought down lightning and struck down those officers? Why are you allowing this to happen to Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery? God, why? I mean, so that we are allowed to have difficult conversations with God. We are allowed to ask God tough questions. We're allowed to bear our soul before God because God invites us to cast our cares upon God. So and I think what hinders us spiritually is not having those hard conversations. Now, and so as you say, sometimes we need help with that. That's why we seek out a pastor and that's how you know that pastor or that ministry is right for you, because they're not just trying to make you feel good. They're trying to make sure that you are good. And part of that is unpacking that spiritual trauma to ask the tough questions of God, of the church. Like, say, church, why are we not doing anything? What is going on in our ministry? Is there something that we can do to ask tough questions of the officers, to have those hard conversations? And that ministry will allow you to ask those questions in a safe space, and then say, okay, now let's have some dialogue. Let me show you in the scriptures where others have had hard conversations with God. Let me show you where others have had to deal with years of slavery and years of oppression, and watch what God did for them, and let's see what God will do for us. So I think that's one of the great things in terms of our spiritual walk, is having those difficult conversations with God. I think the implementing of healthy routines. Then again, from a spiritual perspective, you heard a boatload of great information from Dr. Rogers on yesterday about journaling, about going outside. Even though those things are for our heart and our body, going outside and walking, many of those things also impact our spirit as well. I'll be transparent. I was going through issue. I went to counseling and began to unpack some trauma that was laying underneath the surface. And as a result, I began to overeat. Now, I was doing a good thing in unpacking the trauma with my counselor, but I did not find a healthy routine to make me feel better about the trauma that I was unpacking. And so I started overeating and gaining weight. It's gonna feel some kind of way to unpack that trauma, and then even to have those difficult conversations, they don't necessarily feel good. And so implementing healthy routines is what's necessary to help us. So what are those spiritual routines in terms of meditation, study of the Bible, reading of different spiritual authors, journaling, conversations with other persons who are like-minded in your spiritual walk. So if you're Buddhist, talking to another Buddhist. If you're Jewish, talking to another Jew. If you are Hindu, talking to somebody else who's Hindu. If you're a Christian, talking to another Christian who shares your belief and can encourage you in the same, right? And having those conversations. And then, what I would call prayer partners. Somebody that you trust to pray alongside you, not P-R-E-Y, pray on you, but P-R-A-Y, pray for you and with you, right? I think those are some vital steps in terms of having the hard conversations and then implementing healthy routines. I think that's critical from a spiritual perspective.
That's awesome. And I want to acknowledge a couple of comments that came through. Reverend Rhonda said, not having the hard conversations with and about God hinders us. Yes, Dr. Claiborne. Absolutely. Those were great shares. Thank you so much. Kenny, I know that, we talked yesterday with Dr. Rogers about the stigma around seeing a therapist. And for the sake of this broadcast, I kind of want to revisit that a little bit again before we get into how do you know you need a therapist and all those things, because sometimes people won't even get to how do I know I need a therapist, because you say the word therapist and it's like, lock emoji. So let's talk a little bit about the stigma and how we really process that and move past that to get the help we need.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but just quickly, I want to add to something that, or not add, but just share something related to what Reverend Dr. Claiborne said. in a very real way, when we have challenges in life, we have to seek real solutions at the surface level that can have the potential to grow much deeper and become rooted in our lives, that it becomes a much more expansive experience. So I'm going to tell you a personal experience that is happening even now that has really been profoundly helpful in my life. I went to Oakwood College then, University today, and one of the things that a lot of us as graduates often celebrate is the fact that we went to Oakwood because we have such close knit friendships. About 30 years ago, I met a group of guys, and we've been friends for many, many years now. About 2 years ago, one of them or two of them decided, let's launch a prayer circle. And every Sunday night at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time, we get on this prayer call. And we've been doing that now for almost 2 years. And it has been absolutely phenomenal in terms of not just bringing us closer together, but allowing us to unpack some of the things that we're talking about right now. Whenever things are going on in our lives, we're very transparent, we're very open, we explore current events, we talk about our own personal issues and challenges, we pray about our shortcomings and those of others. We pray to lift others up as well as the community, as well as the nation and the world. It has been an absolutely amazing experience. And what has further enhanced it now is because we now have a Zoom meeting, and we've been doing a Zoom meeting for the past 2 months. Now we get to see each other on Sunday night. We get to have a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor injected into the process. It's just men being men.
Yeah.
We accept our faults, our flaws, our vulnerabilities, in the same time that we're celebrating our accomplishments and our victories, seeking to support one another. And that's just such a valuable thing that needs to happen at the local level, as you were talking about, at the ground level. What can we do within our own communities and our own circle of friends to really promote that kind of thing? So I wanted to share that, but let me quickly talk about the stigma thing. Stigma still, and it really astounds me. I've been a counselor now for about 40 years. And
you're not that old, Kenny. Stop telling stories.
You're so kind, Jeanette. You're so kind. But some time ago, when I first became a counselor, I was faced with the notion of just how profound stigma was in people seeking help. And long before I became a counselor, that was an issue. And it's always been a conversation within the profession and certainly without the profession. Stigma continues to be in 2020, I would say, the number one reason why people don't seek help. It's not because they don't have access, because there's always either a sliding fee scale or a free service in one's community. There are lots and lots of resources in terms of mental health agencies, even though we need many, many more. And I think we also need many more people of color in counseling settings. But it's not because people are not available. It's typically because of the stigma attached to it. And we've got to find ways to encourage people to see past the stigma of saying that they need help. And just like I mentioned yesterday, you know, if I have some kind of internal problem or even something external, something's happening on my skin and something's happening, I feel a pain of some sort, I'm going to seek out a physical doctor and a doctor who treats physical illnesses. And I'm going to hope that that doctor can find whatever's going on with me and provide a diagnosis and some ongoing treatment. It's the same thing with a person who has the mental health side of us. And I talked about, you know, the three sides of our being: physical, mental, and spiritual. And we got to feed each part, and we have to create balance between all of those things. And unfortunately, even those of us that stay prayed up, many of us that go to the gym and exercise all the time, don't take the same time to take care of our emotional and mental health. We don't take the same time or make the same investment in making sure that we have a solid framework by which we can actually move through life, dealing with the challenges of families, finances, work, community, and so much more. And we've got to find a way to say, listen, it's just okay. In fact, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And there are some incredible resources online that people can find to support their journeys. I'll look one up and post it here on the feed so that people can get a hold of that. But help is available if people need it. The problem is people have to convert their perspective of what mental health is all about. It's not because you're broken down and you can't do something, or because you have some kind of a flaw in you that nobody else has, which is what people tend to feel. I guarantee you, if you think you've got some kind of a mental health issue, there are probably thousands and maybe even millions of people who have the same issue. And so there really is a much larger community of need than people are willing to acknowledge. And we've got to find a way to break through that stigma.
Absolutely. I love that you've talked about what it is, what mental health help is. What it is not is an indictment against you as a person and your character. What it is not about your worth and value to society. What it is not, that we have to also understand what it is not. You know what I mean? And my prayer, and I think you said this at the beginning, is that these conversations go virally in many pockets and places, so that we can just say, we can all collectively exhale and go, okay, now's the time. I've been doing it this way. That hasn't been working. Or I'm in this new space where I've never had to deal with things at this level. I need some help. That's my hope. As we move forward into the conversation, I'm going to ask each of you to just share, how do you know you need a spiritual counselor, advisor, or a therapist, or a coach? How do we go about finding the right person, and all of those things? I want to kick the discussion off, so I'll come back to you right after this, Kenny. A friend of a colleague of mine felt very passionate about helping people find the right therapist. And so I just want to share this small video clip from ALISON CROSTHWAIT, who is a registered psychotherapist, who wanted to add to the discussion about how to find the right therapist. So we'll take a listen to her. We'll come back and we'll, I'd like for you to address some of the things she talks about, Kenny.
Sure.
Great.
My name's ALISON CROSTHWAIT. I'm a registered psychotherapist, and these are my top tips for finding a therapist. The first thing you should know is that some therapists work on strategies to help you with things like anxiety. Some therapists work at rooting out the root causes of the anxiety, and some therapists work on both. Many therapists work on both. If you're looking to get to the root cause of a trigger, of a feeling, make sure that the therapist that you're working with also does that type of therapy. You can ask them. It should be on the website. My second tip is get a referral. Personal referrals are a great place to start. It's tempting to start searching the web. There's nothing wrong with that. But ask a few friends if they have somebody good, because personal referrals are a great way to go. And in today's online world, location doesn't matter so much. And therapy can be online or in person. So go for it. My third tip is do a consult. Most therapists, I offer 15 minutes. Some will offer up to an hour to chat and see, are we a fit? What are your questions about the process? What's the person's training? Whatever your questions are, take advantage of that opportunity and feel out whether the person is right. Because that's my final tip, and it's probably the most important one. You should like your therapist right off the bat. You should feel comfortable. You might want to feel a little bit like you could be friends, maybe. It doesn't have to feel that way, but you want to feel that simpatico, because you're going to do some deep work. And if you're feeling like they're very, reserved, or they're not understanding you, or they're tired or stressed, or they don't like you, all these thoughts and feelings are important in a therapy over time. But right off the bat, choose someone you're comfortable with, because you want to be able to go for it. Maximize your investment of time, energy, money, and just tell this person what's happening for you. Be as honest as you can. So you want someone that you really like and feel comfortable and you can be honest with. All the best in your search for a therapist.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting, because I hadn't even considered it, Kenny, is that the different angles that you can come out with therapy, right? In terms of finding somebody who is going to either just focus mostly on strategies and sharing strategies, or somebody who's a deep dive digger, you know, that's going to get to root cause, or it's somebody who does both? So why are those two different things important? Oh, wait, I muted you for the video. Sorry, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important point in terms of strategies. And I'm just going to tie that to the fact that psychology works from multiple theoretical perspectives. So when you talk to a therapist, that therapist, based on how they've been trained and perhaps what they tend to prefer in terms of their practice, is what they're going to apply to you. So you may have a psychoanalytic therapist, and that person is going to really kind of focus on unconscious thinking that kind of happens and is connected to what happened when you were a child. And they'll kind of focus on exploration of a lot of those kinds of things. You may have a behavioral therapist that really believes that changing a person's behavior is the root of whatever needs to be done in that person's life. So that person might actually have that person doing specific types of activities from a behavioral modification perspective. I consider myself a rational emotive cognitive therapist. I believe that thinking precedes action. And so I focus a lot on how people think and how they process information. And so, that's a big part of what the psychotherapist was suggesting, that you have that consult with that person. I kind of call it an interview. You need to interview your potential therapist and find out what they think, what their perspective is on treatment. How long do they expect to work with you? Because depending on what kind of therapist you are, you may be somebody who works with people in a much shorter term than others. And if you think that the therapy that you need, because the problems are so severe, is going to be require much longer engagement, then that's the person that you need to seek out. But you need to have that conversation with people at the very beginning. I think that the best thing that this person said, the psychotherapist, was that you need to seek out a referral.
Yeah.
Talk to people who have perhaps knowledge about the therapy community. I get calls all the time. In fact, I still get referrals. It's pretty amazing. 10 years after I walked away from practicing completely, that I still get referrals all the time. But that's because of the work that I did in this community, and also the reputation that I built as well, that people still trust me, still people believe in what I'm able to do. And even though I'm not practicing, I do know people in the profession, and I try to direct people there. So I'll ask people questions like, is there a preference for gender? Because these are all important factors too, in terms of the fit of that particular relationship. What is a preference for gender, preference for race or ethnicity? What about age? Is that an issue? Does the person have insurance or not? Because that's going to be an important factor in determining how the person moves forward. Have they ever been to therapy before? What do they think about therapy? So when somebody asks me for a referral, I actually kind of interview them a little bit to find out what they might be looking for, because people really, I think, in asking them those questions, learn a lot more about what they may or may not be needing, even before they engage a person in trying to find out if they're the right person to help them. So the psychotherapist gave some good advice, and I would certainly support everything that she said. The only thing that she did say about liking the person the first time, I'll make this distinction. If somebody is remanded to therapy, they're not necessarily going to like you. And so that's not going to be anything that's on their plate or your plate as well. You're working with somebody who doesn't want to be there. I've worked with lots of kids who, came kicking and screaming, and then they thought I was the best person after we worked together for a while. And I've had some that came kicking and screaming that walked out kicking and screaming. So, I mean, whether you like somebody or not is important, but sometimes that relationship is determined by what happens, the back and forth in the therapeutic process.
I agree. I also think it probably is predicated about, if you're trying to seek help, like kids usually aren't trying to talk to nobody about anything anyway, but if you are trying to seek help, I'm big about energy. And I'm big about, if I feel like there's going to be some sort of connectivity, you might tell me things that I'm not going to want to hear. And I've got to like you enough to hear it, I guess is the thing. And so for me, for me. And this is, listen, this is not just about therapists. This is about pastors. This is about coaches. This is about everything. There's like got to be something in you that resonates. So let me take it to that place. There should be, we'll take like off the table. There's got to be something in you that kind of resonates with this person, so that whether you like the words coming out of their mouth or not, whether it is a spiritual advisor, whether it is a therapist or coach, that you trust that it's coming from the right place, and that you're trusting that it's coming for your good and for your help. So I absolutely agree.
And that's a huge barrier too, because remember, I mean, we seek our friends out because our friends are more likely to be more invested in the friendship.
Right.
So they're not going to tell us necessarily what we need to hear.
Right.
And so that's a huge risk, even on the front end of that process, that you're going to hear stuff that you're not going to like.
Right.
And reconciling that is one of the big challenges of any therapeutic relationship.
I think that referral thing is why that's important, because what you get in a referral is not just, their credentials, but you also get what was the interaction like when you got to the hard part. What was the press? What did the press look like? What is their language in the hard spaces? That's why that referral thing you were talking about is so important. What else would you add to any of that, Kenny?
I would say that it's important to think about therapy from this perspective. I always tell people that I don't give advice. What I do is I create a safe environment to explore things that are happening in your life, typically around the issues of decision making and problem solving. Mm-hmm. And I think that people who are looking for therapists who simply want them to give them the answers are really setting themselves up for potential failure. And the reason for that is because what will happen in that situation is if a person succeeds, they're going to give the therapist credit for that. Right. But if a person doesn't succeed, they're going to blame the therapist for that. And so I think for me, this is just me personally, I try to make a clear distinction. And I don't say to people, I'm not going to give you advice.
Right.
What I do is I say to people, well, what do you think about that? What have you tried? When you tried it that way, what was the outcome? Would you do that again? So I try to promote independent thinking, because I'm not trying to build a relationship of dependence on me.
That's right.
That person has to live their life outside of the therapeutic office. And so I want to give them the skills that are necessary in order to move them forward and to create the healthy environment that they're going to need to be able to make decisions and, in an adult way, take responsibility for those decisions. And that includes the establishment of boundaries and all the other things that we talked about in the diagram. So I think it's important for people when they're going into the process to kind of know and understand what are they really looking for. There's some people that when they commit to therapy think it's going to last forever. And most therapists are not thinking about therapy lasting forever.
Yeah.
Most people are thinking about a short-term window. And typically when I used to do my consults, I would say to people, once we agreed that we were going to continue forward, I would say, okay, we're going to make appointments once a week over the next 2, maybe 3 months. And then at that time, we're going to take a look at where we are and determine what we need to do. So I think a person needs to be mindful of that process, mm-hmm. that they're not just simply spinning their wheels, that there's evidence of progress because that person is making, some very real efforts to establish some goals in terms of moving forward and some milestones that they can determine, am I making the progress that I need? A big part of the therapeutic process falls on the person seeking help, not just the person who's giving help.
Yeah. You're on it, brother. You're preaching good, as we like to say in the church. You're preaching good, sir. I hope you all are getting these gems and nuggets. I want to go to the chat room real quick. Savalas had said just a while back in the conversation that just as an exercise, we have to give our bodies and minds time to recoup. When you've been lifting a lot of weight, you got to give your muscles time to recoup. Dennis says the concept of having hard conversations with God is new for a lot of Christians in the AA community. We're taught for so long, don't question God, that we find it almost blasphemous to have questions about what and how God is doing. And that's what I love so much about what you were saying, Pastor Claiborne, about God's not going to be offended by your questions. He already knows what's in your mind anyway. This is not a newsflash to him. The process and time allotted should often be followed up with a coach. I like, and that's why one of my colleagues, I was trying to get her to come on. She's actually a psychotherapist and a coach. And I'm always intrigued. When I met her, we went through training together, of her use of both. So Kenny, let me ask you, before we move into that direction, we talked about how you find a coach. I'm interested from your standpoint, what do you think people should know to expect? We talked about insurance, we talked about this, we talked about all the tips that Alison gave us, but in terms of just how to get your mindset to go, what are some things that you would say, this is what you need to know when you go? What am I preparing for first session?
I think you need to settle in your mind that you need to be honest. You need to be willing to be transparent. You need to be willing to be open. Here's a typical scenario when I first meet somebody, and let's say that first session. I say to them, why is it that you're seeking therapy? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not presuming a person knows, but I'm trying to get some sense of where they are in the process. If a person self-initiates going to see a therapist, typically they have some idea about what the challenges are, what the problems are, what the issues are. They'll tell you, I'm having some kind of relationship issue. They'll say, like when I worked in an academic environment, my roommate and I aren't getting along together. If they're a parent, they'll talk about, I've got a problem with my children or something like that. Maybe there's a step parenting challenge. I mean, most people are going to kind of give you some sense of what's going on in the process. And I think that that's extremely important, that the person be willing to have some sense of responsibility for whatever's going on and some understanding of that. So very early on, you want to be able to have a person speak to you in honest, transparent ways so that you can work through the process. You want them to, the other thing I would say, that you really want people to commit to what they're doing. A lot of times people are kind of half in, half out.
Yeah.
They'll start missing sessions. They'll start making excuses about sessions. And you really want to challenge people to be true to their commitment. But again, that's not something you want to deal with on the, you're in the process. This is something you want to deal with on the front end of the process.
Yes.
I'm going to commit this to you, and this is what I'm going to be expecting from you. So I think that conversation about expectations is real important in the very beginning, which ties in again to the transparency of the process. And I think that people need to know, again, I was talking about the time frame, that people need to have a sense of how long is this going to last. If you go into a situation and say, I'm just going to go talk to a therapist until I get the problem solved, the problem may or may not be solved in a reasonable amount of time. And I think that the reason you put time constraints on something or boundaries on something is simply because you want to have a way to focus on whatever you're working on. And I think it's kind of an open-ended project. It's a lot like the student that gets the term paper assignment on the first day of the assignment. And then 13 weeks into the 15-week semester, they're like, oh, I better start working on that term paper.
Right.
You don't want that kind of situation to happen in therapy. You want people who have said, I've got a problem, I want to work on it, to be able to move forward. And then the final thing I'd say, accountability. I'll tell you real quickly about the worst client I ever had. And I always use this story because this is the person I actually fired from therapy. And I mean, I don't just fire people from therapy, but I had to let this guy go. He was actually remanded for treatment, but he told me after about 8 months in therapy, he told me a big lie that I found out about. And prior to him telling me this lie, I had asked him some questions and he told me something completely different about the circumstances. When I was able to talk to him about 2 weeks after that encounter, I confronted him with the situation and told him that I was referring his case back to the judge because he had violated that process. And again, on the front end of that process, that therapeutic journey, I think you need to talk to people again about expectations, that I expect you to do this. And if you don't do this, this might be the outcome. And in this particular case, I had to terminate this particular client. He's one of the only clients I've ever terminated in 20 years of work, but it was because his lie was so egregious, and it affected so many people, and because he was under the supervision of the court at the time, it was something that had to be done. But you need to talk to people and talk about accountability for whatever they're going to do.
That's awesome, Kenny. I mean, I hope you all got all the nuggets out of that, because this is this kind of stuff we don't get to talk about all the time. And I'm glad we're having the conversation, because I think it's what helps people's hearts kind of calm down, because, you know, we don't like uncertainty. We want to kind of go in knowing. So these are the kinds of things that really help us get a beat on knowing your part as a therapist, and then our part in that co-partnership, because there's a your part and our part. Remember that chart we had up talked about your personal responsibility, even in that. And I will say, from a coaching standpoint, that there are a couple of things that you said that I wholeheartedly agree with. First of all, because it has become such an overly saturated industry that is not regulated as well as it should be, I'm always, you know, that referral thing is huge. It's hugely important in the area of yes, Neil, commitment and accountability. Hugely important when you're talking about a coach. There is an organization called the International Coaching Federation that certifies coaches and has kind of a monitoring process over its coaches. But even in that, you know, and so what I would say is that referral thing, and watching people from afar too. Are they consistently and constantly the same? You know, you can find out a lot about on social media when you follow people and you see their interactions with people. Are they not just a coach on their coaching page? Are they a coach on their personal page? Are they a coach when they're in public? Are they a coach when they deal with people? Are they the same in and out of season, in and out of title? Because those things are important. In terms of insurance and things of that nature, there are some progressive insurance companies that will include it as part of holistic health and healing with acupuncture, acupressure, and things, but many times it's not covered under your insurance. So that's a very important thing that, you know, you want to take into consideration. I can't speak because there's so many different strands and brands of coaching. I can only speak to mine, which comes out of strategic intervention, which I told you all yesterday, comes out of the Robbins Madonna's training. Now, Chloe Madonna is a well-known therapist. You can look her up. She is, she comes out of the psychology field, the psychological field. But so a lot of what we do is based in positive psychology. And as Kenny was talking about, I also believe that it all starts with our mindset, which is where I try to focus for people in terms of our coaching. I too am somebody who wants to qualify myself to people and qualify them to me, because everybody, you need to be on the same plane about what we're trying to do. I try to tell people I'm here to help you push past stuck. I know that's what God has gifted me to do, is help push people past stuck. Not me physically pushing you, but let's look at the blocks, the things that are causing some of that. And I have often gotten to places with people where I say, you know what? Here's where I need to refer you to a therapist, because it's something deeper than I'm equipped to handle with people. And I'm a responsible coach, and I'm not going to lift in places that I was not called to lift. And so that's something that I always tell people up front, even through the paperwork. And I am bonded and I am covered because all right. So we just make sure that as we're working with people that we are also trying to, you know, I'm also trying to create independent thinkers. I don't want people dependent upon me. And I have to set very clear boundaries. And sometimes because of the likability thing, you have to, like, we're not building friendship groups and all that kind of stuff. Like, this is a coaching relationship. And I know therapists deal with that too, because people, when you help them, now they're endeared to you, right? And so you have to set those boundaries about what that looks like. And I'm about empowerment. So it's not about, people are often surprised when I go, well, I think we're done. They're like, well, I got one more. I'm like, no, we're done. We're good. You're good. But I got one we're good. Like, you know, because now I don't want to be your crutch. I don't want to take what has been good and give you the tools and what you're working on, and you're in the system and you're processing and you're working it out, and now it turns into a crutch. So those are things that I always like to watch as well. One of the things about coaching, you know, the myth is that we, and I can't say for everybody, but you know, because some coaches may give you advice. You shouldn't be getting personal advice, because what works for me in my life may not work for you in your life. And so you can talk to your friends and get advice. I think what's important is, are there strategies, are there tools, are there things to help you in that area? And for me, with mindset, because of the strand of coaching that I come out of, you know, we'll use different things like neurolinguistics. I've been trained in Reiki energy understanding. We use light hypnosis through storytelling, role playing, archetype exploration, the different parts of us that operate in us. You know, meditation, emotional freedom technique, you might have heard as tapping. These are different things that we pull all into the coaching thing that may be different than some other experiences you have, but they're all geared to work mind, body, and spirit. And so I think, you know, when we talk about, well, how do I know I need a this, a that, or a that? And I think it's funny because, you know, Reverend Cherie said, you know, sometimes you need to start here and follow up with the that. You know, sometimes it might be a spiritual issue you're dealing with. You might need to find a spiritual advisor first and then go talk to your therapist and find a coach to help you walk it out. You know, that is, that has happened. I get referrals from churches all the time. And so I think now it's trying to help people understand, where do I start? I understand my options. I understand the things that are out there, and I understand that, you know, next steps means getting help of some kind. So let's have the dialogue now about knowing where to start. How do I know when it's a spiritual thing I need to deal with first? And how do I know when Pastor, I saw you rise up. I felt like the meeting was coming. So
I mean, how do you know that it's spirit? How do you know that it's heart? How do you know that it's body? I think you have to follow what you hear that speaks the loudest. If your neck is hurting, you might not want to go to the pastor. Unless the pastor has an MD behind his or her name, right? If your neck is hurting, then you ought to go see the doctor. Now, because, and I heard Dr. Tamar Bryant Davis say this, that sometimes you might be having, let's say, a panic attack, but it shows up in your body physically. They would say, therapists would say, go see your doctor first, because you need to, there may be some physical things. That's first, because that's what's crying out first. Once they figure out what's going on in your body, then you go to counselor or the therapist, because perhaps that physical manifestation was something that was happening emotionally, right? As a result. I had a case of shingles once before the age of 40, and that was physical. So I went to the doctor, but the doctor looked at me and said, "Have you been through something traumatic?" And actually, I had been through an emotionally traumatic experience, but it caused something to happen in my body. So I would say, what is speaking the loudest? Is it your body speaking the loudest? If your body speaking loudest, go see either a doctor or a physical therapist or a trainer, right? You see people about the body. If your heart is speaking the loudest, right? You know, fear, panic, crying, you know, that kind. Then you probably need to see either life coach or therapist, counselor, right? But if the spirit is speaking the loudest, in terms of you're not able to connect to your faith, or you're wondering about faith, or trying to figure out where God is, if that's what's speaking the loudest, then that's when you need to be seeking your pastor, your imam, your rabbi, the leader of your faith community. That's when and if you have no faith, then that's when you begin searching for it. If you know that that's where the area is. So whichever is speaking the loudest, I would say that's where you start first.
That's good. That's good. Kenny, anything you want to kind of help stack?
Yeah, no, that's real good. You know, I think I would really simplify this whole notion of when do you seek help. when do you know you need help? I think that there should be a fundamental premise in all of our lives that we cannot handle everything that we're going to confront in life. That we're human beings and we have limitations. And that when we experience those limitations, whatever those limitations are in our lives, we could define them in terms of spiritual things, academic things, career-seeking things, relational things. And if we categorically think about those things, there's probably some direction, some path in life that we can go down in order to be able to confront those things, address those things, improve those things, and more. And so when I'm thinking about the whole notion of mental health, again, going back to stigma for a second, most people are not going, they're going to look away from mental health because mental health has the stigma of weakness, brokenness. You know, you don't want that. You know, I can be, and what's so crazy about it too, I can be broken spiritually and turn to a pastor, but I can be broken emotionally and not think I need to go to a mental health professional.
Right.
So we've got our wires kind of crossed up as far as those things are concerned. And so as Reverend Dr. Claiborne said, I love what he said about, you know, what's speaking to you. A big part of that has to do with our own mindfulness and our ability to connect with our self-awareness. You know, what's going on in our own lives, processing that thing, listening to those things. And that's why, you know, when I think about the Word of God talking about being still, and there are many times in Scripture that there's this imagery of this metaphorical use of stillness or direct applications of stillness, stopping, assessing. Anytime you have that opportunity to do that, I think you expand your capacity to really think about what's going on in your life and seek the help that's necessary for that particular thing. And so I would say, again, if you're a human being, the chances that you're going to need some kind of help is there. I mean, that's a given. You know, I don't see anybody going from conception to death without needing some kind of help somewhere. And so I think the sooner we get used to the notion of help being available, which again, that's a hard thing for people to do just on the surface. You know, everybody, you know, kind of wants to think that, you know, asking for help is a sign of weakness. And again, going back to men where we're socialized to be in control and to be in charge and to be strong, you know, we don't want to say help. But I'm going to tell you, you know, I'm not moving anymore unless I have professional movers or a crew of my brothers helping me move because I need help. I'm not Superman. Right. And 2 heads are better than 1. We have to understand from a very practical and fundamental perspective that when you need help, just say you need help and get it over with. You'll feel a lot better even from doing that.
That's awesome. Just call a thing a thing. That's what we were talking about yesterday. You know, it's funny that you bring up that scripture from Psalm because actually the release experience, the whole thing that we came out of my 21-day devotional about was founded when I was there in Huntsville and I was just starting my career at the NBC affiliate and found out I had cancer. One of the scriptures that kind of helped me to deal was that scripture out of Psalm, be still and know that I am God. And as I became an advocate seeker of what does that mean and digging into it, the original Hebrew root of that phrase be still actually means let go. It doesn't mean be quiet. We often take it to mean be quiet, just don't move, but it actually means let go. And that's when I came into the revelation knowledge about how important releasing things was, because what I found was in my own body, as Reverend Dr. Patrick Claiborne was talking about, that malignant tumor I had in my neck was growing as I was just starting a news because of the stress and because of I'd never been experienced to all of that before. And I literally watched it growing. And so like you, the manifestation of stress in your body, you know, and that's the reason why studying energy and all those things are important to me, because we're atoms. We look solid, but we're all vibrating matter. And so we don't realize that pain, that trauma that we're holding on to, those things that we're internalizing, it's causing all of this disruption in our body. And if we don't release it, it's not going to be just a Facebook post you make. It could end up being something else in your body. When we get scared, and we hold our breath, and we don't realize how many times a day we are proverbially holding our spiritual breath, holding our breath in our soul, our spirit, holding our physical breath. And so all of these things, work against us. And that's why that piece that Kenny's talking about, the self-awareness, the checking in, just like, because it becomes the new norm, and you don't even realize I'm not operating at my normal self. I am in this heightened state of fight or flight. I do have all of this adrenaline and all of these fight or flight hormones raging through my body. How do I deal with this? And so processing out, that's why I'm, you'll hear me until the cows come home talking about mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit. And it doesn't even matter where you are in the spirit plane and game. But we have to acknowledge that it exists, and we have to acknowledge that it is a part of our being. And if we as people want to be made whole, if we as people want to be healthy, then we have to contend for that. And contending for that means I might need to call a spiritual advisor or get a referral. You can go online and check out everybody and anybody right now, and they never even know it. Yeah. You can get so many referrals right now. You can just pop from page to page and check out people. You could go to Kenny Anderson's page. Let me see what he's about. And make sure that you send me I know you have a website. Make sure you send me that information too. You can pop on Bethel AME's page in Baltimore and say, let me see what this guy's talking about. And you can pop on my page and say, let me see what she's talking about. And here's what I've been committed to do this entire time. And those of you who follow me, you already know. I tell you, email me through my website, and I will make sure that we direct you to where you need to go, even if that is not to me, because I'm more committed to you being healed, healthy, and whole than I am committed to getting a few dollars off of a client. So that is that. And I have a higher accountability to make sure that you are where you need to be. Right. And we all here feel the same way. And I know, Dr. Claiborne, go ahead. You have something.
Well, yeah, that's what I do. I had prior to coming on, I knew that one of the topics was going to be, how do you look for a church, or look for a minister, or look for a spiritual advisor? And that's one of the things I was going to share, that I know I am not supposed to be everybody's pastor. Right. And I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And so when people come, one of the things I tell them is, check us out, look us over. And that's one thing you should do. You should, just like you interview a therapist, just like you interview a doctor, check out the church, check out the pastor, and see if that's a good fit for you, because it may not be. My commitment is, I want you where God wants you to be. Yeah. And so perhaps you need to be somewhere else. I think the 3 key words for me are feed, connect, and serve. And people sometimes are looking for either one of them, or a combination of the 3. Some people just want to be fed. They're empty, they're torn down, and they're looking for something to build them up, something to feed them. Does that ministry feed you? When you get there, do you feel like God is talking to you? Do you feel like your faith is fed? When the rabbi is speaking, do you feel the presence of Yahweh? When the imam is speaking, can you sense Allah? I mean, is that faith leader, when they speak, when the community gets together, is that feeding your soul? Yeah. 2, can you connect there? Can you find a connection to God in that place, or can you connect to other people? Because some of us are looking for a connection to God. Some people are not looking for a connection to other people. They're just looking to find, can I connect to God here? And then I'll go about my business. And then, is it a place where you can serve, where you can use your God-given gifts, where you can express your faith, whether it be singing or art or construction, whatever gift you have. So feed, connect, serve, and it can be 1 or 2 or all 3 of them. And to me, I would love to believe that every place you go is a God-led place. God led me here. But I've come to understand sometimes God will give us choices. Yeah. And you can have ministry A or ministry B or ministry C, but each choice has its own consequence. This is the church of builders. They're always trying to build something. They're always trying to put something. So this church is all about community service. They're going to be community service, community service, community service. This church is all about care. They're going to make sure that you have everything you need, and they're going to love you up. So that each choice you have has a consequence, and you may not get the Superman or Superwoman pastor or faith leader. They'll have some good good and they'll have some growing edges. So this one may be great when it comes to preaching, maybe not so great when it comes to teaching. This one may be great when it comes to teaching, not so great in terms of pastoral care. They may be great with pastoral care, but maybe not so good on the preaching. But what you ought to be looking for is a church that is striving to be excellent, or a faith community striving for excellence, where there is strong leadership, where there is a community mindedness, and where there is care for those that are in that community.
That's awesome. Great share. Go ahead.
Pastor, a shout out real quick. Pastor, you are reminding me about why I love you so much as a brother and as a leader, spiritual leader, as a pastor. You and Reverend Sherry pastored here in Huntsville for a period of time, got to know you guys, and it's just so refreshing to be reminded about why I cherish you guys in my life. Hearing you just talk and share about the duplicity of religion and faith and the fact that there are many options available. And, I'm not trying to recruit people to my thing. People need to know what their thing is. And, acknowledging the rabbi and the imam. I mean, you're the whole person and you're the real deal. And you're just reminding me about how much I appreciate you guys. So thank you for being here today. And just thank you for being you.
Praise God. Thank you, man. Love you, brother. Thank you.
Y'all gonna make me tear up.
It's a bromance right here.
I know, the bromance. I love it. And I get to claim it because that's my past. Yes, and you saw all the love coming out of the and here's what's funny. I know you're not called to pastor everybody, but here's what's the beautiful thing about what if we look for purpose in everything. With this pandemic, people have been homebound and they get online. And I know there have been several people who've been touched by you and Reverend Cherie, and I've heard dealing with me with the women's release. And they have come over and watched online, and they may never step foot in the church, just because of proximity and other things. Neil just said it, they're great. I love them. Check them out. They got, good inspirational word. And I'm in Ohio, so, I see you hand on face. So, and some other people that have done that. So that's the beauty about where we are in this place, you all. There's so much, as much as there's content that pulls, the rage out of us, there is content that is building and that is inspiring and that is encouraging and to help us deal with what's happening on this side. And I encourage you to find those spaces and pockets of places where you can be fed, where you can feel connected, and where you can serve in some way. I tell you all the time, when you share things like this, or maybe when you do your own platform and you do things like this, that is a part of serving. Because you are helping people connect to information and resources and people. You may never have met my Kenny Anderson brother. You may have never known my past. But because I pull them into my platform, now we, exposure is so important. And now we have grown our ability to think and to process and to be able to build community. Sabala says, Pastor almost persuaded me to move to Baltimore. And Neil says, I plan on making a trip. That's hilarious. So funny. I'm so glad that Pastor PC was my pastor in that season of my life in Alabama. God sent him in the season of my life that was not so pretty. And thank you for the testimony that you shared, Dennis. That is awesome. And I can say, if you want a referral, I can wholeheartedly stand and refer both of these gentlemen to you for what you need in the area of mental health counseling and in the area of spiritual advisement through whatever platforms. And I also want to let me go ahead and put up you all your websites on your names. And then that way, people can check you out and take a screenshot with your picture and everything. So there we have Reverend Dr. Patrick DeWitt Claiborne, Bethel1.org. And I'm going to put up there you go. Give me the thumbs up again. There's your screenshot. Pat. There you go. Right there. I know you all love me. I know you miss me, Kenny. Kenny, what's the website for you?
KennyAnderson.org.
Easy breezy, lemon squeezy. Here we go. Hold on. Bam. Kenny's up. There's your screenshot.
.org, not .com.
Don't take that one. Don't take it. That's the other beautiful thing about being on your own network whenever you want to stream. You can make the online correction. Bap, there you go. KennyAnderson.org. All right. Love, 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 love it. And you all see mine streaming. And I hope that this has been a fruitful discussion for everybody. I hope that you got them, bam, referred, bip. All right. That's what I'm talking about. And I hope that you all not only will take these nuggets for yourselves, right? Because it's one thing to get up off our own mat, but we're in a place right now where we need to help our brothers and sisters get off of their mats too. So take care of yourself, do what you need to do for you, and then let's help others. You can be a light bearer. You are a light bearer. We all have our own unique assignment. So share this out. Have the conversations. Savala says that 2 awesome men. Thank you for your input and for your wisdom. Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. And I hope you all heard Kenny's story about building friendship group out of that. For him, it was for college, but we're never too old to find those places where we can connect. And so, think about what that might look like. Stay connected to me, because if I find out some things, I will be happy to share them on this platform so you can know where to go to find different things. Very fruitful. Thank you, Karen. That's what I like to hear. Gentlemen, if you don't mind, pop into the green room for me and we'll wrap up. Appreciate you so much. Would you all just give them hand claps and whoop whoops and all your virtual hearts on Periscope? I see them. 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 And everybody else, I'm sure this isn't the last you see of them. And if you did not see the discussion that they were involved in yesterday on Life Unscripted, please go to my pages and check that out. I mean, that thing is so rich and so full. We need that to go viral, because that discussion will help get a lot of people free. Thank you. Thank you. They're saying, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. And I'll be with you in just a second. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Kenny. Man, what a time. And you all help make it be all that that you all are just the opposite. There you go, Daryl Ezel. Don't think you have avoided being on one of these shows. I'm coming for you. Coming for you. Thank you, brother. Daryl Ezel. Daryl Doc. All the Daryls in the house. Great inspirational men of God. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Blessings to them all. Absolutely, Pamela. Good to see you. It has been a week. We wrapped up our 21 days of the devotional. And for those of you who aren't following me yet, please do. We are moving forward. We are moving forward. We have finished one journey. It will have its own page. The book is still available. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where books are sold. The Release 21-Day Action Journal. But beyond that, we have to move forward. So make sure that you text the word release to 22999 so that you stay in the loop on what's next. We're going to continue having these conversations. We're going to continue to bring you the information that you need to make better decisions for better living. I gave the schedule off the top, but in case there were some of you that missed it, let me just put it up so you can take a screenshot. Here you go. We are moving forward, and I thank those of you who filled out the survey, because it was your input and your insight that helped me really pray about what direction to go. So Mondays, it'll be Mindset Monday. It'll just be a 15-minute popper. We'll get in, we'll set our thermostat for the week. Tuesdays, and all of this happening Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday will be Living in Purpose. We'll be coming from my book of the sort of similar topic, From Dream to Reality, Navigating the Path of Your Life Purpose. It too is an action journal to walk you through those things, to make sure that you're in the right space and place. Wednesdays is Release Devo. You'll be seeing different people on with me. It's unisex, even though really women's release was unisex too. It's going to be everybody and anybody. And you'll be seeing different people on. There'll be some men hosting with me as well on Wednesdays. Sometimes Thursdays is going to be those things that we talked about yesterday, like coping with trauma and light interviews and lifestyle things and entertainment, but it'll all be geared toward empowered living. And then on Fridays, you'll have live and replay coaching. You all asked for live coaching. You want to see some stuff happening right before your eyes. And so I'll be doing that as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to share that new dimension with you all. So hi, Sharon. I'm glad catch the replay. If you didn't, Willstein, thank you so much for popping in. You all have been amazing this week. Amazing. And it's been my pleasure to lead and guide you and to learn with you. We had some amazing breakthroughs. Y'all see your niece going ham back here in the background? I got to get off this show and go tend to her. Thank you so much for all that you do. I love and appreciate you.